All right, good morning. Finally back at it. Got to a place where I can do a little video. I've got a low pressure oil system. I know I've been meaning to come out with the video on that, so I figured we could go over that real quick. So we got this rack here. I'm not sure what kind of rack this is, honestly. I mean, it looks pretty standard. You got your toggle switches, you got your compressors at ground level, oil separator, you got an accumulator, reservoir, you know, you got your circuits. It's a different kind of rack, but it looks pretty standard like any other rack. So as always, your system with your oil system is going to start and end at the compressor, right? So starting at the compressor, we've got our discharge that's going to come out and go into our separator, right? From that separator, you're going to separate the oil, and the way that this one does it, I forget exactly what type of separator this is called, but you've got your two pipes coming in the top, which means you're going to have a sock sitting down inside this separator, right? That's going to separate that oil. So basically what's going to happen is that discharge gas is going to come in, hit that sock, separate the oil, drop it to the bottom, and then go back out on this line right here, right? And then on the bottom of this, you've got a float. So if you take that off, you're gonna have a ball float. So if anybody's familiar with like carburetors, it's the same exact thing like a ball float in a carburetor, where you have a ball and a needle valve. And you can see there's a line coming off of the bottom of this separator that's coming up, focus, and going into your reservoir. So this is where the biggest difference between a high pressure and a low pressure oil system is. Hey, real quick, just wanted to thank everybody for supporting the channel. We just hit 1,000 subscribers, so I just wanted to take a second, say thank you to everybody. Couldn't do it without you, obviously, but you know, just continue on. I'm looking for big things for this channel, you know, trying to educate people, trying to entertain people. So make sure y'all like, subscribe, share, you know the deal. Everybody's fucking telling it to you all the time. So, but just keep it up, and again, I really appreciate it. All right, let's get back to it. Is you have a separate separator and reservoir. Remember, with that high pressure oil separator, it's a separator reservoir in one, whereas now we have a dedicated separator, and that's all it does is it separates oil, right? And then we have our dedicated reservoir, which it holds oil and then passes it on to the compressors, right? You can see oil comes out of the separator and into the top of this reservoir, and then coming out of the bottom of the reservoir, we go through our filter, and that's when it hits our compressors, goes into our compressor pots, and that's where the cycle starts over, right? So like I said, it always starts and ends at your compressor. Now, what's the biggest difference with these? You have a low pressure reservoir, which means you don't have any oil differential valve on this line, right? Remember, with that high pressure system, you were coming off of that separator, you hit like a Y valve, an oil differential valve, and then you went into your compressors. Whereas here, we have this OCV, this oil check valve, right? This one right here, let's see if we can see it. If you can see that right there, that's an OCV 20. So what that means is it's gonna keep this reservoir 20 pounds above suction, right? And if we follow this line up, you can see it goes up and then into our suction header right here. That's our suction header, right? So what happens is we have high discharge gas coming out and into our separator, right? And what happened is this OCV is then gonna check all of that oil, or all of that high pressure, back into our suction header, except for 20 pounds above suction. So if this is, say, a 40-pound suction, right? Just to make it simple, this reservoir should be sitting at about 60 pounds, okay? And the reason being is because that suction pressure is gonna be the same as our crankcase pressure. So just like all of refrigeration, you need that differential of pressure in order to move, right? In order to move oil, in order to move refrigerant. It doesn't matter what it is, you can't have the same pressure and expect to move whatever you're trying to move, right? So we make this a little bit higher pressure than our crankcase pressure, but not too much to where it's blowing out that oil, right? So instead of having that Y valve, that oil differential valve, we have that OCV, or that oil check valve, that's going to check that pressure off. And then it's simple. All it does is it comes through, and then as compressors need oil, right, it goes into our pots. As our floats call for oil, that oil is going to come out of the reservoir, through that filter, into that line, and it's going to go where it's needed, right? So pretty simple. And then you can see we have sight glasses on these separators, or on these reservoirs rather. And I said in the short, you know, you have your low and your high sight glass. Now, you only want your oil level to be at that low sight glass. Reason being is if you get too high of oil, right? Say we have our oil sitting up in here, we're gonna block that check valve. So one, we're probably not gonna pump out the pressure that we need to, and two, you're gonna start feeding oil from your separator just straight back, or from your reservoir just straight back into your suction header, right? So you only want that ball to be floating at that first sight glass right here. As long as you have that first sight glass floating, you're pretty good, or you're gonna be good. So that's pretty much it. Just, you know, like I said, I've been meaning to put out a video on a low pressure oil system. Finally got an opportunity to. We're finally back at work, got all moved, so we're gonna be posting up some videos again. So as always, I appreciate everybody, I appreciate the support, and go ahead, like, subscribe, share, you know the deal. But yeah, later.